Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 10-meter band for techs. My name is Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. This is my contact information, k8zt73@gmail.com, and my webpage at k8zt.com. The slideshow tonight has a number of links throughout it. You will see a little symbol like this. You'll see this font when there's a link. This link will get you to the slideshow and give you access to it. You can also shoot the QR code that's available now, and it'll be available at the end of the slideshow. And if you need a PDF, you can click on the link and it will generate a PDF, but be patient, it takes a little while. So a couple key pieces to success getting started on HF with 10 meters for techs and newer hams. We'll start off with the bottom line. The too long do not read. 10 meters is the only HF band with voice and data privileges for technician licensees. A large number of radios are available to choose from. Antennas are smaller and easier to install and set up than other HF bands. Operating on 10-meter HF is very different than operating on VHF, UHF, either repeaters or simplex. Tuning and timing are the keys to successful contacts. A mentor can be invaluable, and upgrading gets you more additional privileges beyond the 10-meter band. I'm sorry the presentation is so long, but I wanted to be as comprehensive as possible with tonight's presentation and covering everything from introduction to what the band is, propagation, antennas, licensing rules, equipment, etc. There's a lot to learn. Unfortunately, I cannot perform a Vulcan brain meld or an old-fashioned bucket the brain dump. So I give you a couple suggestions to follow through. View the slideshow and access the resources afterward to review things. You can review the YouTube recording, and I'll have a time guide so you can jump to each specific area in the recording. Don't miss the last 2 points of the session, finding a mentor and considering upgrading to general class or higher. And most importantly, take the information tonight and get started as soon as possible. Unlike fine wine, my slideshows don't get better with age. They just get longer. I also made the slideshow so you can jump to any of the portions of the slideshow by clicking on the links. So you see as I moved each of these, there are live links so you can jump to each of these links. So if you're watching this video recording, just be aware that you can also jump to the portions of the slideshow. Okay, so let's jump in. The warning is for a limited time, get on 10 meters while the band is open. 10 meters has a couple good years every 11-year sunspot cycle, and we're already past the peak, but there's still good time available, so you want to do it soon. Technicians can make voice contacts on single sideband, and they can make digital contacts on FT8 and FT4 on 10 meters, something they cannot do on any other HF band. For everything, there's a season. 10 meters is similar. During high sunspot activity, it's bursting with worldwide communication possibilities. During sunspot lulls, it's rather blah with QSOs limited to local stations only. The third option is sporadic E. This comes anytime throughout the 11-year cycle, and it isn't dependent on the high sunspot numbers, but it is a semi-decent hothouse tomato with limited availability and possibilities. It's not like worldwide communication when the sunspots are hot. And Barry, if you didn't spotlight me, if you could go ahead and do that.
Sure.
Again, worldwide DXing good during good times, but during sunspot lows, limited activity and propagation distance means less chance for tech voice contacts. Now, sunspots are good right now, but they're going to be going down. I know that. So just an article about 10 meters and 6 meters both. You'll be surprised. A lot of times when you think the band is dead, it is really not dead. So an article about that. Again, you can go out and read that whole thing. Mainly focusing on sporadic E. So here's where we were at in March of 2023 when 10 meters started to really get hot. And unfortunately, we're 3 years later and we're starting to decline a little bit. But I'm going to say that you're probably going to get a 1.5 to 3 years of good activity before things really drop off. I'd say sometime around 28 is going to be around the end here, but we got time. So many of us got into amateur radio for the lure of talking with hams in far away and exotic sounding places around the world. These are some QSL cards from stations I've worked around the world. To do this magic directly without wires, satellites, or the internet, we can use radio, but we need HF radio, not VHF or UHF. The high frequency radio bands allow worldwide propagation. And as you can see by this chart here, if we look at extra class, they have privileges on all the bands on HF. If you look at general class, they have privileges on all the bands. And the technicians have a little bit of spot right here on CW only, a little bit of CW here, a little CW here. But when we get to 10 meters, you see voice and data privileges for technicians. About 50% of the techs of hams in the United States are tech licensees. Most techs unfortunately limit their operation to VHF and UHF repeaters and occasionally simplex FM. Many get their license but fail to get on the air or get on and burn out quickly. Some upgrade their license, many do not. Sadly, some drop out of amateur radio. I think 10 meters can be a solution to that, at least a good stepping stone. When I got started back in 1981, novices and technicians had on-air HF privileges for CW only, and we didn't have, as a novice, any VHF, UHF, so that's pretty much where you had to start out. So I got a taste of HF very early working CW. Tech enhancement added 10-meter data in phones, and this occurred in March of 1987. You could read the article from QST about novice enhancement. Notice it's the 39th anniversary this month, March of 1987. 10-meter privileges included two new subbands for technicians, 28.1 and novices, 28.1 to 28.3 CW and data modes, and 28.3 to 28.5 voice mode, but only with single sideband. So why was this such a significant event? Well, before this occurred, there were no voice HF privileges for novices or technicians on any HF bands, just on VHF and UHF. The second thing was, at this time, upgrading from tech to general required you to pass a 13 word per minute CW test, a big hurdle for many people. So a lot of people didn't get on HF voice because they did not have the ability to get the 13 word per minute code test passed. But even though these enhancements were significant, there was a few gotchas. The full 10-meter band was not included, only 28.3 to 28.5, so there's a bunch of single sideband that wasn't given to technicians. Voice privileges on 10 meters did not include AM or FM modes, only single sideband, and power was limited to 200 watts, but that's not really a problem. 200 watts is plenty of power for any band, and especially for 10 meters. There were a couple other changes that took place in 1999 and 2007. In 1999, Morse code requirement for all licensees was reduced to 5 words per minute, the original novice level, and they dropped the novice and advanced license, making our 3 license system that we currently have with technician, general, and extra. All the privileges of novices and techs were combined in the new tech license, and there was no addition beyond that. February 2007, FCC eliminated Morse code requirements completely, no 5 words a minute, and techs were granted CW privileges in the HF bands, and novices gained all operating privileges above 30 megahertz. So here's the 10-meter band privileges as we sit right now in 2026. Data 28.0 to 28.3. Single sideband voice 28.3 to 28.5. CW on 80, 40, 15. And of course, all the VHF and UHF that we had before. So a couple myths about technician licensees. A lot of people think VHF, UHF repeaters are the only activity. They think there's no HF privileges. We just saw there are some. They also think that only code experts can make CW contacts. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And that there's no way to work DX. Well, you can work plenty of DX on 10 meters. A lot of people think 6 and 10 meters are always dead. Well, part of that is because they're not on during the sunspot high and they're not going on often enough to catch the sporadic E openings. And a lot of people think techs can't work FT8 or FT4. They can on 10 meters. You can't on the other bands, but you can work on 10, 6, 2, 440. You can work for FT8 and FT4 there. Now, there's a bunch of things you can do with the technician class license besides get on 10 meter single sideband. And I talk about these in a special presentation called Technicians Life Beyond Repeaters. I talk about VHF simplex, UHF, VHF, UHF contesting, satellites. There's a lot of things you can do with a tech license. So that's a whole other presentation. You can go through the slideshow and watch the video. So someone asked earlier, what can you do on 10 meters? Well, I operate 5 watts all the time. And from January 1st, 2023 to March 1st, 2026, about 3 years with 5 watts, a simple vertical antenna, no beam, I work 200 DXCC entities. Now, not all these were done in the technician portion of the band. Some were done above 500, but most of them were in the technician portion of the band on phone, CW, or FT8 and FT4. So this is what you can do. Okay, enough background. What do you need to do to get started? Well, you need basically 4 things. You need a radio capable of 10 meter single sideband. You need a microphone for single sideband or a computer for FT8, digital modes. You need an antenna and feed line to feed it from the radio to the antenna. And you need a power supply or battery to power the whole thing up. So that's basically what you need. Now, you might do this in your car, put the radio in the car, use the battery from the car, have a mag mount on the roof, and you're ready to go. You might do this from home with a dipole antenna and a 12-volt power supply. There's a lot of ways you can do it. So let's look at radios first. If you do an internet or Amazon search for 10 meter radios, what you're probably going to see are a proliferation of what I refer to as CB vendor 10 meter radios. And here's an actual search on Amazon, and you can see that the first choice here was the Anytone Smart 10 meter radio for truck small size. Notice it's AM only. Can you use this as a technician? No. That is a CB that just happens to cover the 10 meter band. But it's useless for technicians because there's no single sideband on it. Next one, the Striker SR94, AM, FM. Nope, not again. The next one, the Anytone Aries 2. This has high power. This does have single sideband. You could use this radio in the novice portion of the band. But what does it look like? It looks like and functions like a CB. And so forth and so forth. So these CB vendor radios, some of them can be used on 10 meters if they have single sideband, but you're going to see that most of the features are designed for the CB market. And you're going to see things like higher output and greater range than standard CB. 10 meter amateur radios are the next step after CB, but with a technician class license or better, hams can use these. But all these radios that are being shown here, none of these have single sideband on them, and none of these would be suitable for using in the 10 meter band by technicians. This particular radio does. This radio, I can't pronounce the name of it, the HS4 here, it does have 10 meter single sideband on it, so it could be used, but you'll notice it also has channels over here and a bunch of things that you're not typically see on an amateur radio. Here's another good radio. I have one of these on my desk. I use it on 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. I also use it on 10 meters, but it is FM only. So it's not applicable to technician class. Now, if you get your general or extra class, you can use 10 meter FM, but you can't do it with your technician class. CB vendor style 10 meter radios with single sideband can use, but they often favor CB type features. They're channelized, they have Roger beeps, they have a squelch, they have no antenna tuner, no computer control for interfacing them, no sound card interface for doing digital modes, and a lot of them make it very difficult to do fine tuning. And that's something you have to do because it's not channelized on single sideband. You need to be able to fine tune in stations. They also don't provide any additional bands for you that you can use as a technician. They don't have 6 meters, which technicians have access to. They also don't, most of them don't provide extra HF bands for when you upgrade. Now, some of them do. Some of them have 12 meters, some of them have 15 meters, but again, you need a general class license to utilize that. Now, because almost all real ham radio transceivers, the ones you buy from a reputable ham dealer, include single sideband 10 meters, you can often buy cheaper, used, or older equipment to get on the air. And it works great. 100-watt used HF radio will work just fine on 10 meters. Many of the ham multiband HF transceivers also have 6 meters, which techs have full privileges on. And newer models of radios may make the use of FT8 and FT4 easier with built-in sound card interfaces. So let's compare some radios. Here's three of what I'm going to refer to, four what I'm going to refer to as CB vendor type radios. All three of these do have single side, all four of these do have single sidebands, so you could use any of these. The first one is $479. That's a lot. When we see our prices a little bit later, it does have 10 meters, and guess what? It can be used on 11 meters with some simple mods. It doesn't do CW, doesn't have computer interface, doesn't have built-in antenna tuner, doesn't have a sound card, no waterfall display, but it does have a Roger beep, so you'll be all set to go. Same thing on the next one, $319. This one does cover 12 meters in addition. The next one's a little bit cheaper, $259, and it does do 10, 12, and 11, and similar features. Now, this is from the same manufacturer. This Radio Oddity and this Radio Oddity are from the same manufacturer. They're not the same radio, though. This one is an 80-watt radio. It does 10, 11, 12, and 15. Again, 10 is the only thing we're really concerned with here. And it will do CW. It has a CW mode. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a plug to plug your CW key in. So you have to feed it in. You have to rewire a microphone plug to be able to use it. But that's a simple thing to do. It also has a built-in sound card. It also has sound card capability that you can use an external sound card. Again, it requires a mod, and you can do both of these two mods at the same time by buying one simple plug that allow you to create another plug to plug into the microphone jack. So under $2, you can have CW or digital modes. The next one is a rural ham radio, the Yaesu FT891, very popular with POTA operators. This is a 160 through 6 meter radio. So it has 10 meters and it has all the other bands, 6 meters, which you can use as a technician. The rest of the bands you can use later on, or you can use the bands on CW. It has a 100-watt output, it has CW capability, it has a computer interface capability. It doesn't have a built-in antenna tuner. It doesn't have a built-in sound card, but you can use an external sound card with it. And it even has a rudimentary waterfall display. It does not have a Roger beep, as the rest of these do not have, which you'll notice. And that's just the way it is. But that's okay. We don't need that on a ham radio. $639. So not much more than this for $479. And you get a lot more radio. If you want to bump it up a little bit, the rather new radio, the Yaesu FT710, typically about $10.99. It goes up and down in price. I've seen them as low as $850 on sale. I've seen them as high as $1,200 when they're not on sale. And it has 100 watts. It has all the bands. It also has a built-in antenna tuner, only a 3-to-1 ratio, but it does have one. It has a built-in sound card. It has a full color waterfall display on it. And you might say, Anthony, that's a little bit of money, but that's not that high. But if it is, you can look at something like the $490, which is sometimes available on $450 on sale, the Saigu G90. It's a 20-watt radio, 25-watt radio, but again, plenty of power on 10 meters, and it has a great built-in antenna tuner, and it works on 10 through 160. Unfortunately, it doesn't have 6 meters, so you won't get that bonus as a tech. But that's one of the things you can do. And of course, these are links at the top. So if you want more information on these, and I'm going to talk a lot more about radios in the addendum also. But another really good place is go visit your local ham fest, talk to hams in your group that look for used equipment, and you can find HF transceivers. I've bought HF transceivers, a 100-watt transceiver in perfectly good working condition, quite a bit old, maybe a little dirty. The cheapest I've ever bought one is for $45. And it worked fine. I've bought over a dozen of these that I've given to newer hams for under $125. So they're out there. But really think about something in the $300 to $500 range, and you can get a really good used radio out there. It'll have all the bands you need. It'll have 100 watts. It'll have CW. It may or may not have a CAT interface, depending on how old it is. It may or may not have an antenna tuner. It may or may not have built-in sound card, but you can use an external card. And it probably doesn't have a waterfall display, but you can still get some great used radios out there. So let's look at some other specific radios. If you want to bring back the 80s and 90s, there were two radios that came out. Guess when these came out? They both came out at Sunspot peaks, and they were put out by Radio Shack. The first one was called the HTX-10. That's this one right here. And the next one that came out, it was the HTX-100. Both of these are available many places at Hamfest. And unfortunately, there's a lot of them are sitting in garages, basements, closets, etc., and people don't know they're there. So I've even seen them at garage sales and non-ham radio flea markets, people assuming that they're a CB and selling them. The prices vary wildly. I've seen them as cheap as $5, and I've seen them as expensive as $300. So it all depends on what the buyer wants to sell it for. But both of these work fairly well. They're pretty simple, but they do have single sideband. They do cover the 10-meter band. If you're willing to go with low power, these are 5-watt miniature radios, only 3.7 by 2.4 inches from QRP Labs. Now, these were CW only radios, but they recently made a change, so they work on single sideband only. So the QMX, you can get the high band model that covers 2017 all the way up to 10. The kit is $102. You can buy it pre-built with the case for $152. And you can use it on CW, single sideband, and digital. Or if you're just interested in digital, for $69, you can buy this QDX. You can get one that covers 20 through 10 meters for $69 for the kit only, or pre-built with a case for $112. No display on the front because you don't need it. It's all controlled by your computer. You can run FT8 and FT4, and it works just fine. I mentioned the Xiegu G90 a little earlier. This is it, the one that's in the $490 price range. Xiegu also has a cheaper radio. This is probably the lowest priced 10-meter new radio that I've seen out there. It's the G106. It covers 80 through 10, so it doesn't have 6 meters, but it's 5 watts output. Fairly basic radio, but it comes with a microphone and everything you need to get started with it. And again, around $200, sometimes on sale for even less. So when we're looking at options, we could go with the CB vendor radio that I talked about earlier, priced from $200 to $750. You could go with a cheaper, lower priced radio like the one I just showed in the last two slides, about $125 to $700. That'd be the $700 range would be the Yaesu FT891. Or you can get a full-featured new radio from $900 to $1,500, the ICOM 7300 Mark II, the Yaesu 710 or the Yaesu DX10 or the 710, a Kenwood 590. These are all available in that price range. If you want to add VHF and UHF in addition, so you can use it for other technician activities, including single sideband and digital modes on VHF and UHF, there's radios available in the $1,200 to $1,900 range. And again, all the used radios I talked about, or even buy one of these. If you are going to buy one of these CB vendor type radios, a lot of them are available on the used market or the Radio Shack. So that's radios. And here's a chart just summarizing everything I talked about. These are all links that'll take you out to the radios that I talked about in the presentation. And we'll talk a little bit more about radios later, but this is just a comparison chart of some of the currently available new radios on the market. I also have a presentation on buying amateur radio transceivers, and I also have a spreadsheet that has all the current radios and some of the discontinued models with comparison charts that you can look at, and that's again available at tiny.cc by AR and tiny.cc by AR-SS for the spreadsheet. Okay, a couple last words on radios. Probably the most important thing about radios I'm going to tell you tonight, don't let the quest for the perfect, cheapest, best radio hold you back from getting started. Over a ham radio lifetime, you will own many radios and antennas. So the important thing is to get started, and then you can always upgrade your gear later. Now, my wife, Linda K. at ODP, was helping me edit this, and she gave me a sarcastic editorial note that I had to include. She said, not many radios, many, many, many radios was her comment on that. So don't keep waiting for the perfect radio to show up. Get a radio and get on the air, especially while the sunspots are great. The next comment about radios, sometimes the solution is actually two or more radios. A starter inexpensive used radio that can be the solution until you get an idea of what you want or need for HF. An inexpensive compact QRP radio can be great for use while hiking or POTA, or one of those mobile radios we talked about to keep in your car on 10 meters once you get something else for the house. And then have a traditional 100-watt base station radio in the shack that can provide you multiple modes, multiple bands, fancy features, etc. So we'll talk more about radios at the very end, but that's where I'm going to end for radios right now. But you do need a few other things besides the radio. You need a power supply. I'd suggest you get one that puts out 25 amps, even if your radio only requires 22 or 20, get one that puts out 25 amps. That'll be good for most 100-watt radios. If you're going to run one of those QRP radios, you can get by with a 5-amp power supply very easily, or you can bypass power supplies completely and go with batteries. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. The second thing you need is an antenna. You also need coax cable or other feed line to feed your antenna. If you're using non-resonant antennas, you might also need to add an antenna tuner to that. Notice these are all color-coded, and these color codes will match the different topics as we go through the next slides. If you're operating digital, an external sound card adapter may be necessary if the radio doesn't have a built-in sound card adapter, and you'll need a computer, but you can get by with a really cheap computer to do that. So these are the other things you're going to need. You could probably buy everything on this page for a couple $100 very easily, or you could even, if you're willing to go for used stuff or stuff you already have, even cheaper. So let's talk a little bit about power supplies. There's two main types of power supplies, and there's an excellent introductory video that I'll let you watch on your own. You can click on this link and watch the video on power supply types. There's linear power supplies, which are the traditional type of power supply with a transformer in it. They are heavy, they're less efficient, and they often cost more money. But they're quieter. You'll find many of them used, and a lot of people prefer linear power supplies. Most people that like linear power supplies, though, aren't using them portable because they are heavy and hard to carry around. The other type of power supply is called a switching power supply. They're lighter, more efficient, they often cost less, but if they're not designed well, they can cause RF noise, which can interfere with your receiver. They often have cooling fans, which sometimes can be noisy, which the linear power supplies don't. But there are a number of good switching supplies out there that work very well nowadays. The other way you can power your radio is with a mobile setup. You can directly connect to your vehicle's battery. If you connect directly, it will help reduce electrical noise. It'll also help you maintain a constant voltage and current. If you try and run it from existing wiring in the car, it might not be able to handle full 25 amps. It might be noisy. It might have other things on the circuit. So I'd suggest you run a separate wire to your battery with double fusing. And there's information on that in the last part in the addendum that talks about mobile installation. So read through that if you want to do that. You can get by with some of these really low-powered radios, a 5-watt radio, 20-watt radio, by using a vehicle accessory port such as a cigarette lighter. But most of the time, these support lower amp draws, usually about 10 amps or less. So be very careful about using something like that. Now, a lot of people just simply use external batteries. They use batteries for POTA operations, portable operations, but other people put portable batteries in their car so they don't have to run a separate circuit. They keep everything on a separate circuit and they charge their batteries with a trickle charger and other methods of doing it. I mentioned antennas. There's a whole variety of things to choose from. Probably the simplest antenna is a dipole, but you can also have vertical antennas, a single band antenna, a multi-band antenna, a mobile antenna, often a mag mount CB antennas can be retuned. You can have simple beams. Those will give you more gain and help your signal get out better and give you directivity. A 2-element Moxon antenna is a compact antenna for for 10 meters, but you can also have a Yagi antenna on uh, 10 meters. You might have a multi-band antenna such as a multi-element Yagi or a hex beam or spider beam are all popular things. Now, I could talk for the rest of the week about antennas, but let's just cover a few basics about antennas in 10 meters. The good news is that antennas for 10 meters are the smallest and most available of all HF band antennas. The dipole is only about 16.5 feet total length, each leg being about 8.3 feet. A small Yagi or quad or Moxon are fairly compact. You can easily turn one with a TV antenna rotor. You don't need a heavy-duty ham rotor. And you can put it on a tripod on your roof, a push-up pole, or other things. Many CB antennas can be retuned, usually by trimming the length for resonance on 10 meters. So you can also use mobile antennas that can be found very inexpensively and retune them. The question comes up about vertical versus horizontal polarization. That is extremely important as a technician on VHF and UHF. If you have the opposite kind of polarization, if you have one antenna horizontal, one vertical and one horizontal, you will lose signal strength because you're talking directly to them. On 10 meters, what we're talking about is long distance communication where it goes up and is bounced off the ionosphere and comes back down, and the polarization doesn't matter anymore. So polarization is not a big factor unless you're talking directly line of sight or not bouncing off the ionosphere. So doesn't matter if you pick a horizontal or vertically polarized antenna, either one will work fine on 10 meters for DX. So here's the simple instructions for a dipole. You can see other than 6 meters, this is the smallest dipole. And you can set it up as an inverted V if you only have one center support instead of two supports on the end. I have some information here on a 10-meter do-it-yourself dipole, but there's many, many articles. There's many, many YouTubes on ideas to build dipoles. They're all over the place. The addition of a one-to-one bowline in the feed point will greatly improve the performance, and that's something you can add. But you can even get by without that to just get started. You can also buy dipoles assembled or as kits, or you can build your own commercial dipole with a bowline or anywhere from $40 to $75. So if you don't want to spend time building it, you can go out and buy a dipole with a bowline and be ready to go. Just make sure that if you're buying an antenna with a bowline in it or buying an external bowline, make sure it's equal to the amount of power that you're going to put into it. So if you're putting 100 watts in, don't get a 5-watt bowline or you will burn it up. If you're putting 1,000 watts in it, don't get a 100-watt bowline. By the way, you can use 1.5, you can use 200 watts, so you could theoretically burn out a 100 ohm bowline, 100 volt bowline. 100 watts. Okay, with the dipole, you can actually arrange a dipole in one of 4 different ways. The green part is the elements. Here we have a dipole fed a traditional horizontal format, 2 elements in both directions with a feed line coming down from it. The second one is an inverted V. We have the feed line and we have the 2 elements drooping down. But we can also feed it as a ground plane. We run one element horizontally, we run the other one vertically, and we feed it with our feed line. That is basically what a ground plane antenna is. Now we might actually put 3 or 4 of these horizontal elements on there to make it even better, but you can get by with one. But we can also have a dipole that's stood on its head and then feed it in the center, coming off at an angle. That's called a vertical dipole. So we can do dipoles in a lot of different ways. Now, if you want to get fancier, there's a bunch of antennas you can build yourself. This is a cheap 10-meter antenna option. It's called the Slim Jim 450 ohm window lead J-pole antenna. Some of you may have built something like this similar for 2 meters and 440, but you can also do it for 10 meters. Now, what we're going to do though is we're not going to use just one end of this. We're going to use the 7 foot 10 inches of the window line, and then we're going to run another 17-foot wire off the top of it. We're going to attach it to one of the sides here. We're going to feed it at the bottom, and we're going to put a choke at the bottom of it to handle that. There's a video that you can watch on this. Now, when you build that, you have 3 options. You can build it like this and hang the top from a tree. You can use a support pole, or you can build it inside of PVC. And I have all the information here. If you want to build it inside PVC, you can see that you can do this PVC pipe for less than $17. And if you take out the coax, you're going to be looking at about $26 of cost to build this. The coax is by far the most expensive part of this build. So you can build it right inside the PVC pipe. Here's another one. It's called a flower pot antenna. Again, very similar. This uses coax, the coax as part of the antenna, and it uses a separate element as the rest of the antenna, and then it has a choke at the bottom. And there's two of these. I have information on building these. A simple Moxon antenna. I have two different DIY projects. You can go to both of these and view the information. I think these are both YouTubes. Yes, they're both YouTubes on building this. And you see that it's about 150 inches this way by about 55 inches this way. So it's not huge. And this is collapsible. You could even bring this out on a POTA operation, put it on top of a small pole, and it gives you directivity and some gain. But Anthony, I don't want to build something. I want to go out and buy something. Well, you can go out and buy this. It's called the Solacron, or it's also called the Antron. You'll see it sold under both names. It's basically the A99. It's a 17-foot fiberglass covered antenna, and it is mounted vertically. It's about $135 for one of these. I won one at a Hamfest a couple years back. Or you can buy the improved version, which has these little ground radios on the bottom of it for about $185. These are very popular with CB operators because they work anywhere from 10 to 12 meters. So they work on 10, 11, and 12 meters. There is a little ring here. You can adjust them slightly to get it tuned up for the band you want to use it on. But they are broad enough you can actually use it on all three bands without any problem. This is the Diamond CP610. You've seen many of these diamond antennas. A lot of them you may have a 440 or 2 meter or 2 meter 440 combo or even 6 meters. This one has a lot longer radials on it on the outside, counterpoises, because this is a 10 meter and 6 meter antenna. I found them available anywhere from 250 to 285 new. And this will let you work 6 meters and 10 meters, two bands that you have access to as a technician. Now, mobile 10-meter antennas, there's a wide variety of monoband and multiband mobile whips available. CB whips can be used. They're often less expensive. Typically, mobile whips are compromised antennas. On lower HF bands, they're problematic, but on 10 meters, they're actually pretty close to the length of a realistic antenna. So they're not as much a compromise as other bands. They come in basically three different flavors. There are loaded coil mobile whips. This has the coil at the base. This has the coil in the center. But both of these are shortened stainless steel whips with loading coils, either base or center, that make them shorter than 17 feet. You can also get a 102 or 108-inch fiberglass whip or metal whip. Usually they're covered with fiberglass, but some of them are just stainless steel. And you can mount this, and that will work just fine if you have a ground poise for it. The ground poise might be your vehicle. It might be a temporary set of radials that you run out for it. The third option is something called a ham stick, and ham sticks are available anywhere from 160 through 6 meters. They're basically a fiberglass bottom with a helically wound loading coil on it, and then they have a top with a metal element on it that's adjustable. So this is one for 10 meters. Usually they have a little label on here. At the Toledo Ham Fest a couple weeks ago, I picked up 6 of these for $15. So they're out there. Beta World sells something called the Momo Beam. It's a 10 meter and 6 meter Moxon. So if you want to buy something new, it's $329. Serio has something called the SY27-4. It's a 4-element Yagi for $190. And they also have a 3-element Yagi for $160. So these work from 26 to 30 megahertz. So they would cover the 10 meter band and the CB band very easily. There's also other brands of antennas out there. Most of them are not monoband like this, but there are monobands available for 10 meters, but you can also get a multiband Yagi antenna. And finally, there might be a problem with where you're going to put your antenna. This is a problem for a lot of people in getting started. So I have a whole presentation I did for the RATPAC a couple months ago. You can watch the video and see the slideshow on stealth and portable antennas. So you can either hide it at home or take it on the road and operate POTA with it. So a whole presentation on those available for you. Also, I have a link here that takes you out to this document. And this document is something I put together a couple of years ago during the pandemic for hams picking antennas for field day operation when they had to do it themselves. But it basically has a comparison of pros and cons of different types of antennas. And then it has information on different types of antennas, including articles, YouTubes, and even some commercial versions. So we have dipoles, resident, non-resident dipoles, end feds, inverted V's and slopers, verticals, loops, beams, stealth, 10-meter antennas, 160 antennas, magnetic loops, mobile antennas, VHF, UHF antennas, stealth antennas, and a chart from the villages in Florida talking about the stealthiness of various types of antennas. So that's all available from this link right here, tiny.cc/portant. Last slide about antennas. Before we leave antennas, a few important tips. Danger. Keep all antennas away from all sources of electricity, not just electric lines, but electric poles, light poles, anything that might have electricity in it. My rule is the antenna has to be twice the distance from the electric as its length. So if it falls down, it's not going to fall on the electric, or when you're putting it up, you're not going to actually touch electric and it can kill you. Also, if the run of coax is over 25 feet, make sure you buy some better coax. Don't use RG59 for that. Go out and buy some RG8X or even some RG213, LMR 400, etc. So spend a little bit more money and don't lose all your power in the coax. You can also use open feeders, and the RATPAC has a great video by John Pertune on places and things you didn't know about using open line feeders to feed your antennas. Okay, we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk now not about equipment, but about operating. So this is the breakdown of the 10-meter band, and I actually have two slides, depending which one you like better, but they're both the same thing. Someone said the other one didn't print out very well, so I made this one. So if you want to print this out, you can do that. Basically, this is the breakdown of all the 10-meter band, not just for technicians, but for all amateur radio operators in the United States. You will see that CW and data is from 28.00 up to 28.299. But in that breakdown, certain portions of the band are used predominantly for certain types of operations. So 28.0 to 28.18 is typically used for CW, but there's a break where the FT8 and the RIDI is at where there's not much CW being used. So pretty much typically CW hangs out from 28.00 to 28.074. PSK is slightly above that. Then you have automatic controlled data stations such as WindLink stations and other stations. Stay out of this portion of the band unless you're operating one of those modes. Also, there's beacons that you can listen to see when 10 meters is open to certain spots in the world. Don't transmit on top of these. And finally, there's a set of beacons at 28.2 that are worldwide beacons. Again, don't transmit on that frequency. Now, we've been talking mostly about phone, and that's single sideband only from 28.3 to 28.499 is single sideband. There's a frequency of 28.380 where a lot of 1010 nets hang out. We'll talk more about 1010 later. And there's also a QRP calling frequency. Now, when you get on this side, this requires a general class license or higher. So you see we still have single sideband, but we also can do images like slow scan television. We can also do AM, FM, and FM repeaters on this top portion of the band, but again, you have to have a general or extra class license. So again, technicians 28.3 to 28.499, general 28.3 to 28.899 for single sideband. You can listen up here 28 all the way up to 28.899, but you can't transmit up there. And it'll cause one of two things. It'll either cause lots of frustration or cause you to decide to upgrade so you can get into that portion of the band where the stations are at. But the good news is a lot of people hang out below 28.5. Okay, so here's the band, and I'm going to tell you right now, I said it ends at 28.5. It doesn't really. Because of the nature of the way single sideband works, you need to stay at least a minimum of 3 kilohertz from the top of the band. And what I'm going to suggest you do is you stay 4 kilohertz from the top of the band because your radio's frequency indication might be slightly off, especially if it's an older radio. So if you stay 4 kilohertz away, you're probably going to be completely safe. And the reason is this. Here's our single sideband. If we set our dial to 28.496, 4 kilohertz down from the top of the band, you'll see that our signal extends almost all the way up to the top of that point. If we parked our signal here at 28.4990, we'd be way up in the general class portion. So stay at 29.4960 and you'll be in good shape. On the bottom of the band, because we're using upper sideband, just stay a little bit away from the bottom. You don't need to stay a full 4 kilohertz away because your signal is going to be above that. But if for some reason you do use lower sideband, which you're allowed to do, just people don't typically do that on 10 meters, you have to stay above that level. So again, stay 4 kilohertz away from the edge of the bands. Okay, if you're not used to tuning in single sideband, it's a lot different than tuning in FM. First of all, it's not channelized. So it's not click, 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 click. You can tune anywhere in between. So what I have is I have 4 articles here and videos on using single sideband and tuning in signals. One from Ward Silver, one from Dave Kassler, 2 great experts on things, and then 2 other ones. One talks specifically about the ICOM 7300, and the other one talks about 2 Yaesu radios. So just a different little outlook on it. But tuning in single sideband, you got to match the voice and you got to get in the right spot. Because if you're not in the right spot, people won't hear you when you respond to them. Some other good operating techniques: know how to operate your radio. Read the manual, watch YouTubes, practice, etc. There are hundreds of YouTubes out. Pick your radio model and go out and watch all the YouTubes you can, read all the manuals you can, read all the suggestions you can. Learn the syntax, the standard QSO procedure. What do people usually say in a rag chew? You give a signal exchange, you might give your name, your location, turn it over to the station, back again and forth. So by knowing what's going to be discussed, it makes it a lot easier and a lot more comfortable. It does away with some of that mic fright. You need to understand timing and context. Especially if the band is really busy and someone is calling CQ, you need to know exactly when to answer them to increase your chances. If you answer too soon, too late, your chances decrease greatly. You also need to understand propagation. What is the best time of day and year to make contact? So we'll talk about all these in the next couple slides. So first of all, let's talk about propagation. The best time is typically for 10 meters is typically during daylight hours from local sunrise to early afternoon, with a potential resurgence just before sunset. During very high sunspot activity, with a HFI of greater than 135 up to 200 plus, the band can actually stay open well into the evening and sometimes at night, but generally 10 meters, sun up above. Darkness, 10 meters goes away. The 11-year solar cycle greatly influences the activity. I already showed you where we're at in that cycle. But even during lows in the cycle, 10-meter band may open with sporadic E, occasionally or it may open with occasional high SFI days. The best time to look for sporadic E is typically in the afternoon, and even though it can happen anytime during the year, we seem to see more sporadic E during the summertime. Now, you have a great way to find out when the band opens up. If you have a receiver that can receive 28.074, you can listen and there will be FT8 activity on there if the band is open. If the band is open, there will be FT8 activity going on 28.074. Okay, finding QSOs, finding people to talk to. Tuning and listening are a great way to start. Check the band often, tune through the whole band. Don't go too fast or you miss signals. Don't go too slow or you'll miss signals. Utilize propagation tools to look for potentially the most productive times and locations. There's a link on tools for propagation tools that you can go through. It's a presentation on that. Then you can also use spotting beat networks and beacons for current band activity. DX clusters are available web-based as apps and as clients, and Telnet assess. You're actually getting information coming in from stations around the world that are telling you about activity on the band. I mentioned FT8. You can use PSK Reporter to see what activity is going on in the band uh, by looking, on PSK Reporter. Even if you don't operate FT8 and FT4, you can, if you have a neighbor that you know that operates, you can put their call sign in and see where they're being heard around the world, and that'll give you a good idea of where the band is open to. On CW and RTTY, you can actually send a signal, the CQ or a test, and the reverse beacon network will pick up your information and let you know where you're being heard. So the reverse beacon network, and I have a whole presentation on this sort of stuff. There's also a set of beacons you can listen for. You can go to the 10-meter frequency at 28.20, and every 10 seconds a new beacon from someplace around the world will come on, and then the next beacon and the next beacon and the next beacon. They're in CW. But even if you don't know CW, just listen for CW and go to the website, and you'll be able to tell from the website which one is active at that 10 seconds, and that'll tell you where it's at. So if I'm hearing CW when VK6 is on, I know it's the VK6 station. If I'm hearing CW when the 4U1UN station's on, that's it. So this shows you the stations that are on the air right now. 28.20 right now, it's Madeira Island in the Atlantic, CS3B, but in a few seconds it'll switch over to Argentina, LU4AA, and then it'll switch over to Peru, and then Venezuela, and so forth. These are all links, these little things. These are clusters, DX clusters. There's one called My DX Summit, DXscape. These are two clusters. You can simply click on these, and they'll show you what activity is going on in the band. Of course, I pick the slow one, but you can see this station is spotting activity on 20 meters with the Argentinian station. You can also narrow this down or you look at 10 meters if you want to here. So here's 10-meter activity going on and so forth. So all of these are links. There's also information on the reverse beacon network I talked about earlier. There's also some other types of tools you can use for looking at propagation. There's also apps for your phone. But don't be afraid to call CQ. If everyone sits listening for someone else, no one's ever going to make a contact. With plenty of space on the band, don't be afraid to call CQ. If the band seems dead, you may want to call around one of these hangout frequencies. 28.350, 28.40, and 28.450 are places that people generally hang out because they're nice even numbers, and we like things like that. So give a couple calls and see what you can do. Also, think about operating FT8 and FT4. In addition to the voice privileges you get on 10 meters as a technician, you also get FT8 and FT4 privileges. And you can easily tell where your signal is being heard if you're transmitting on FT8 and FT4 by going to PSK Reporter, putting in your call sign, and you can see where you're showing up in the world. Right now, this is the station up in Sable Island, Charlie Yankee 0S, and this shows where he's active in the world, and you can just hover on these. But if that was your call, you could see where stations were hearing you around the world. Okay, you got to remember that HF is a little bit different. When you get on HF, you can cover a lot longer distances. So it puts you in context with hams from other countries and regions that may have different languages, manners of speech, customs, etc. So you need to respect these and understand. HF contacts are often with non or limited English speakers. Avoid colloquialisms, idioms, non-standard phonetics, etc., because they will just confuse them and you're not going to make a contact and you're not going to make a friend. So use the standard NATO phonetics. Know your exchange information because people might ask you for your grid square, your county, your contest exchange. If it's a contest, we'll talk more about that later, and your CQ zone, ITU zone, etc. And I'll talk more about how to find those on the next slide. So this is a presentation called Amateur Radio Charts and Maps. It gives band maps and things, but it also tells you things like CQ zones, ITU zones, how to find your grid square, etc. So this is all information on that type of information that people might exchange with another person on the air. These are some tips of topics to think about discussing with these people. Age, the weather, your profession, your equipment, your antennas, your geographic area, other hobbies, etc. Here's things not to discuss. Politics, religion, controversial topics, anything you would not feel comfortable discussing with your grandmother or your child, don't discuss on amateur radio. Remember, topics can be sensitive to certain countries and regions that you get in touch with on DX that won't happen when you're making domestic contacts. Items that are not age appropriate should be avoided. Use of slurs, prerogatives, derogatory terms, or hate speech should always be avoided on amateur radio, but especially when you're talking to someone where you don't know what the situation is in their location. Okay, the next thing I'm asking is, can they even hear me? How do you get someone to respond to you? If they're calling CQ and you want to answer them, how do you get them to pick you out of the people that are responding to them? Well, the first thing you need to know is where they're listening, not just where they're calling, but where are they listening? On DX stations, a lot of times they'll say things like listening up 5 to 10. That means they're not listening on the frequency they're calling on. They're listening 5 to 10 kilohertz up from where they're listening. They're calling. So you need to tune your radio into split mode and operate split. And again, that's where learning about how to operate your radio is very important. Sometimes, though, they're not really operating split. They're operating simplex. They're not operating split, but they are listening a little bit higher or a little bit lower than where they're transmitting. So what you really want to do is you want to listen for the stations that they're responding to and then match your transmit frequency to the transmit frequency of the station they just answered. And that will get you on the part where they're listening. Match their speed. If they're talking really fast, talk really fast if you want to. If they're talking really slow, make sure you go slow because English may be a second language for them. On CW, also match the speed. So, which replying stations are they answering? Mimic what they're doing so you can be successful. Are they answering first callers, late callers, double callers, tail enders? Are they answering partial calls? Are they answering only full calls? So whatever they're doing, play the game and do what they're doing. Getting in the rhythm also involves things like merging onto a busy highway. And this is what it's like when there's a bunch of stations calling. When you have a power-up in amateur radio, one station calls CQ, maybe they're rare DX, and hundreds of people calling back. So you got to figure out just the right time and place to get in to merge safely. Now, the next thing I want you to do is know the rhyme. And when I'm referring to the rhyme is what they're expecting to hear from you. So if it's a contest, they're going to expect a contest exchange. If it's just a rag chew or just a simple quick contact, they're going to expect the signal report. If you're giving an exchange, make sure you give it in the order and format they're expecting. Use standard phonetics. Have another alternative in case they have trouble with your standard phonetic, but make sure it's something that's going to work well. So if they bust my Zulu, I go to Zanzibar. If they bust my Tango, I go to Tokyo. So two other pretty well recognized phonetics, but they're not standard, but they're my alternatives. If you have a zero in your call, do not say O, say 0. A lot of people, if English is a second language and they hear O, they assume it's the letter O. Also knowing a few words, Q codes. Even though we use Q codes mainly on CW, if you're talking to someone with limited English language, you need to know some basic Q codes. So if they ask you for your QTH, that's your location. So there's a sheet here that has different Q codes on it. There's about 20 that are common. There's actually a couple hundred Q codes, but you don't need to remember them all. I doubt whether someone's going to give you a QTR and ask you what their time is, but they will do QTH. They might do QRT when they're going off the air, QRN for interference, et cetera, et cetera. So know the Q codes, and you can use them on phone. There's nothing wrong with using them on phone. But when something is redundant on phone, like is this frequency in use, don't say QRL, ask is this frequency in use. So if just speaking out the words is better than the Q code, go with the words. There's abbreviations available, again, mostly on CW. And then I also have some information in other languages. I have the number 8 and 14 languages. Most of you might think that's really not useful, but if you're in the 8th call district, if you give Kilo 8 Vite, Zulu Tango for someone speaking French, and so forth. I also have numbers in 13 different languages. You can print this out and put it by your desk if you want. It has all the numbers in 13 different languages, all the way up to uh, both cardinals and normal numeral nominatives. Okay. Am I back to my slide there? There we go. And then finally, the Amateur Radio Conversation Guide was printed by two Finnish hams a number of years ago. It's been out of print for a number of years. I asked their permission, and they gave me permission to post the PDF of their document. So you can read through this, and it has different languages, and it has a bunch of different simple phrases that you might want to use in different languages. Okay, what's a typical contact sound like? So let's do a phone contact in a state with a station here. And this is a phone contest. So station's calling CQ, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. Someone answers. Whiskey 1 Alpha Delta. Whiskey 1 Alpha Delta. Thank you for the call. You're 59 in Stowe, Ohio. This is a phone contact, not contest. 590 Stowe, Ohio. Name is Anthony. Roger, fine business, Anthony. You're 59 in St. Albans, Vermont. Name is Bob. Roger, rig here is an Elecraft K3S running 5 watts. Antenna is 3 element Yagi at 50 feet. Fine business on your QRP. Rig here is an ICOM 7300 with 100 watts to a dipole. Thanks for the QSO, Bob. 73 W1AD from K8ZT. 73 Anthony, K8ZT, W1AD. Typical short non-contest contact on phone. Now, whether it's a contest or whether it's just a regular contact, how do you know whether the other person copied you or not? If they give you any of these things, a question mark, what's your call, again, repeat, your number, your section, your exchange, before dupe, etc., these mean that they didn't get the information or they're not sure. If they give you one of these, a thank you, a Roger, a QSL, a 73, an OK, that means they got the information. I have 3 slideshow presentations that'll help you with making contacts. One is making HF single sideband contacts. Again, another RATPAC presentation. How to make that QSO, get in the rhythm, the rhyme, and know the rhyme and dance the dance. And another one, successful operating tools for assessing the performance of your station. So you can go through all of those. Okay, contest. I mentioned contesting earlier, and some people say, no contest for me. I don't want a contest. Okay, I'm going to tell you that even if you don't like the competition, contests are where the other contacts are at. Just like the famous bank robber said, he robs banks because that's where the money is at. I say work contest contacts because that's where all the contacts are at. So on a typical weekend like this last weekend, the band was full of people making contest contacts. So you don't want to miss out on that. So even if you're not interested in the competition, there's lots of potential contacts. And the other stations are highly motivated to work you, as your contact will mean points for them. There's a wide variety of contests with different bands, modes, etc. For a calendar, click on the WA7BNM contest calendar, and there's all sorts of information on upcoming contests, and it also tells you what the exchange is going to be for the contest. If you're not very familiar with contesting, I have a whole slideshow and video recording called An Introduction to Amateur Radio Contesting. That'll give you the details on what you need to know, whether you want to contest to compete or whether you want to just simply contest to make more contacts. By the way, let's do a typical contest contact here. We'll do one on phone and we'll do one on CW. CQ contest, Kilo 3, Lima Radio. Notice here, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. I didn't give their call because that's extraneous. The contest wants to go fast. A DX station wants to go fast. So don't give their call. They know their call. Just give your call. Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. KZT, you're 5'9", Western Pennsylvania, or you might say WPA. That was the exchange for this particular contest, your AWL section. 5'9", Ohio. Thank you. QRZ, K3LR. He's on to the next contact. We're done. That's it. On CW, even shorter. We're using abbreviations. We're keeping things short and quick. So contest or DX contacts, this is going to be the format. Notice that the signal report is always going to be 5.9 on phone, and it's always going to be 5.99 on CW during a contest or DX. Don't give a real signal report in a contest or DX contact. If you're having a casual chat, please give an accurate signal report. So I have some more information if you're new to contesting from ND3N and so forth. And Dave Kessler has a great one called Must I Submit a Contest Log If I Make a Contact? I'll give you a tip. You don't have to even watch the whole video. No, you do not need to submit. So if you work someone in a contest, you don't have to submit a log. They won't get dinged for that. So watch the video and learn more about that. Okay, 1010 International was formed in 1962 as the 1010 Net of Southern California with the purpose of promoting activity and good operating practices on the 10-meter band. By 1975, there were over 10,000 members, and over time, it's crept up. They've issued they give you numbers when you join the club, and you have a 1010 number minus 44561. There's also 1010 contest on single sideband, CW, and data. These are all on 10 meters. They also run a number of nets on 10 meters, and you can go out and visit their website for more information. I mentioned nets. There's a number of nets out there, and a number of people had asked about nets in the questions earlier. This is a slide. It has links and information on finding nets around the world, different modes, different bands, etc. And you can follow any of these links to find out more about nets. But you might want to start your own net. A nice thing about 10 meters is everyone has privileges on 10-meter phones, so starting a 10-meter phone net for your local club or your friends in the area is a great way to get everyone involved. Local and regional contacts do not depend on the Sunspot cycle, so you can keep on doing it even at the Sunspot lows. It will be accessible for all classes of hams. Your base, portable, or mobile stations are accommodated. It's a great training resource for net operations and for further HF activity. There's some software to assist you in running your own net. It's called NetLogger. It's free. You can go out to this link and find out more about it. Okay, we're going to switch gears again here. We're going to talk a little bit about CW and data modes. Again, you have full privileges with these as a technician on 10 meters. So I already pointed out where things take place in the band. It reminds you not to transmit on the beacon frequencies. If you're interested in learning more about Morse code, I have a presentation called Fun with Morse. You can watch that for more information. And remember, you also have privileges in addition to 10 meters on 80, 40, and 15. FT8 and FT4, the fastest growing amateur radio modes. These are digital sound card modes. They work very well with technicians on 10 meters. They're only a few years old, and there'll probably be more modes developing like this. Very, very important to note, though. Even though you have HCW privileges on 80, 40, 15, and 10, you do not have data privileges on 80, 40, or 15, only on 10 meters. This is currently the most common infraction by technician licensees operating FT8 on one of these bands that they think they have privileges on, but you don't. Here's more information on getting started with FT8 and FT4. These are called digital sound card modes, and they actually use the single sideband portion of your radio to send out the information. A computer encodes the information, decodes the information, and so forth. We're going to skip over these slides. The magic doesn't really take place in the sound card. It actually takes place in the software being ran on your computer, programs such as WSJTX for FT8 and FT4, and so forth. Once you get your radio set up and configured with sound card capability, you can install WSJTX for free and run all these different modes. You can install FLDigi and run all these modes. And with a little bit more money, you can install the VARA software modem. It's a paid device, paid software, and you can run the WinLink emergency modes. And there is WinLink available on 10 meters. So great things you can do once you get your radio interfaced. Okay, 10-meter mobile. 10-meter mobile activity is convenient on all modes, single sideband, CW, and data if you can carry a computer in your car. CB antennas can be used. Now, this is probably the one time that those CB-like amateur radios actually have a niche. So I'm running running the QT80 in my mobile. It's, again, has 10 meters, 12 meters, 11 meters, and 15 meters on it. But again, it fits in the car very easily. It's got a click, 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 but it does tune in between These Radio Shacks would work also for that. If you're interested in portable operations because you have antenna restrictions at home, you like to mix amateur radio with other outdoor activities, you're interested in operating POTA, one of the fastest growing activities. We're operating special events, demos, etc. I have a whole presentation on portable operations that you can go to. If you don't have a radio yet, you can still listen to HF by using online tunable software defined radios, SDRs. I do this a lot when I'm working with school children. I do presentations for school children, and I have this quick start guide to using these online software defined radios to tune in and listen to signals around the world. And again, you have access to all these also. You can use this to listen without even having a radio. If you do have a radio, you can also listen to your transmitted signal from a distant location to see how you sound. If you're just getting started with HF, there's a 5-hour series. It's 4 weeks and a slideshow that Dennis Kidder, W6DQ, and I did together a few years ago. This goes through everything. This is 5+ hours of video that you can watch for all details about everything from installing your station, grounding, etc., etc. So great series, again, from the RATPAC. There's also one for VHF and UHF that's available from them. These are 3 videos on 10-meter operations. I'll let you follow these on your own. There's also something called the 10-meter reference list by Eric N6SPP. You can go out and go through that. It's got information on different frequencies where there's different activities taking place, and he updates that frequently. And again, I have some more amateur radio resources, information on logging, both general and contesting. When you start operating HF, you're going to want to log your contacts, something you probably were not doing on VHF and UHF. So definitely take a look at this one on logging. You can do it on paper and logbooks, but take a look at this, and I talk about electronic means of doing logging. And if you're going to do logging, you might as well interface your radio to your computer so you can do your logging much easier. And that'll also give you the ability to do sound card modes. And once you do both of these, you're probably going to start getting QSL requests, and you might want to start collecting QSLs and going for awards. So I have information on QSLing in an online world. All 3 of these videos are available for you to take a look at. A couple additional suggestions before we finish up. Having a mentor can help you on your ham radio journey. It can be invaluable, having someone to help you. Now, the thing that happens to a lot of people is they don't realize, well, first of all, a mentor is someone who can help answer questions and avoid pitfalls of the hobby. Sometimes they're referred to as an amateur radio Elmer. Mentors can answer questions about what rig to buy, loan you an antenna analyzer, show you how to use that antenna analyzer, help you when you're having trouble understanding a particular concept. If you haven't already, I suggest you find a mentor or mentors. And I believe in the idea of multiple mentors. I have 3 mentors. When I have antenna questions, I talk to Steve. When I have technical radio questions, I talk to Frank. And when I have questions about digital modes, I talk to Ken. So having multiple mentors is not a bad thing. Where do you find a mentor? The first place I suggest you look is your local amateur radio club. How do you find a local amateur radio club? I have 2 links here, one from the ARRL, one from QRZ that lists clubs around the country. At those clubs, you might find old timers, or they're more than happy to help newcomers. My wife always said I sat there and asked questions galore when I first got my license. Now she said I'm that old guy that people come and ask questions to. So nowadays, you might also find mentoring online. There are a lot of websites and mailing lists that are geared towards helping people become better amateur radio operators. And RATPAC is a great example of that. With over 400 videos available, you can find out about a lot of topics very easily. And I also picked out some YouTube channels that I think are pretty good YouTube channels that you may want to visit. There's also some garbage out there. So just be aware when you're online, there's good stuff and bad stuff. I also have a bunch of presentations. I forgot how many I even have, and I'd be happy to do one for your local club. But even if you want to just look through them yourself, just click on this link. It'll take you out to all my presentations. There is the topic area. There's the title, slideshows, videos, documents, and you can go through all these. I don't record them myself, but if I'm presenting to a group and they record it, I post links to the group, the recordings. I'm doing 9 presentations in the next 12 days for clubs around the country via Zoom. So if you'd like a presentation, I'd be happy to do one for you. Or you could just look through my list and view the videos of other recordings. A couple final suggestions. After you experience the fun and excitement of QSOs on 10 meters, you may want to explore other bands. Your options include learning and operating CW on 80, 40, and 15, which you can do as a technician. Or, number two, upgrade your FCC license to General Extra Class and get access to all bands and modes. The General Class license material are not much different or difficult than Technician Class, and a CW exam is no longer required for any license. Number three, do both. Upgrade your license and start operating CW and digital and phone and have even more fun. Okay, but wait, there's more. There's an addendum. So once we end here, we're going to go into the addendum briefly, and I'll let you go through the addendum on your own. So just as Bob would say here, wait, there's more to be seen. You can click on this link to get to addendum when you're going through the slideshow. But before we do that, I want to stop at this slide because we're going to go into the question and answer period here after we go through the addendum. And you can also shoot this QR code or write down this link if you haven't gotten the slideshow access yet. So I think what we'll do is we'll go through the addendum first, and then we'll come back for questions. I'm not going to cover everything in the addendum. I just want to show you what's there. So in the addendum, there are really three areas. The first area is things that are available only to general and extra class. That's FM and repeaters and AM. Because these are not available to technicians, I put them in the addendum and I have information on them. The second thing that's in the addendum is more radios and information on mobile radio installation. So let's just take a quick look at it. And basically what I do in this addendum is I talk about FM and FM repeaters. They start at 29.2, they go up to 29.68 for the repeaters, and there's also simplex frequencies. There's a lot of radios available. They're not that expensive. They do work well. The thing about 10 meter FM, it's not used a lot. So you're going to find a lot less activity than you will on single sideband. But if you do have a repeater in your area or you're interested in getting started with it, it's a great area to get involved with, but you do have to have a general class or up license. Simplex 10 meter FM worldwide calling frequency is 29.6. So even if you don't have a general class license, but you have a radio that can receive on 29.60 FM, put it on, listen, if you see what's going on. If you do have a radio that you can operate there, once you make a contact, move off of the calling frequency onto another simplex frequency so that you can let other people get on there. There's also different calling frequencies for JAs and for British hams. AM. AM is available only for generals and up licensees. The common practice, I got these mixed together. I got FM and AM on the same slide here. I'm sorry, that should be FM is available for. This is the AM slide. AM is not available to text. AM is available only for general and up. 10 meter activity between 29 and 29.2. And during the CB boom, many amateur radio operators converted CBs for operations on 10 meter AM. And that's the reason why the FCC did not give technicians AM capability, because they didn't want them using converted CBs to get started on the band. Most modern amateur radio multiband transceivers do have AM, but it's not as popular as single sideband or even FM. This is the chart I had earlier with the different radios. And then I go through different radios. If you're looking at a radio that has VHF, UHF, HF, VHF, and UHF included, there's four main radios that are available, two QRP radios and two 100-watt radios, the Yaesu 991, the ICOM 7D100. There's two QRP, the ICOM 705 and the Yaesu FTX1, but it can also be used as a 100-watt radio by buying the Optimum version, which has an amplifier. If you're interested in some recently gone models, these are radios that are no longer being produced but are available on the used market. I picked one of these up 2 weeks ago at Toledo. It's an Yaesu 817 for $250, 160 through 10, and VHF and UHF. This is a 100-watt version. That's the 857. Here's a base version of that, the 897. And here's another older radio, an 847, that has both VHF, UHF, and HF. ICOM has a number of discontinued radios that have the ability to do 10 meters plus VHF, UHF, and HF. Now, if you're interested in U radios, currently available, I mentioned the Yaesu FT897, a portable radio. Doesn't have a built-in antenna tube, doesn't have a sound card, but covers 10 meters through 160 through 6 meters. The Yaesu 710 is a very popular low-priced radio, again around $1,000. You can get it with the microphone, with the speaker or without the speaker. It was funny this last week, the one with the speaker was actually cheaper than the one without the speaker due to a cell that they were running. Or if you want to step up a little bit more performance, the FTDX10, but again, under $1,500. There's a radio that's very popular. It's the ICOM 7300. There's been thousands and thousands of them sold over the last 10 years. And this year they just came out with the Mark II version of it. So if you're interested, you can pick up the original 7300 used at discount prices, or you can go for the more features in the 7300. I have two reviews and information on the difference between the two models if you're interested in that. For vehicles and mobile resources, the K0BG site is the website of mobile radio. It's a great site to go to, but I also have a bunch of other resources on mobile installations for radios. This is a very interesting video. It's a video of a gentleman installing a radio in his truck. He talks about the antenna installation, the power installation, the radio installation. It's a step-by-step. It's from the ham radio prep people, and it's a good video.
For less than
the bottom line, 10 meters is the only HF band with voice and data privileges for technician licensees. A large number of radios are available to choose from. Antennas are smaller and easier than those on other HF bands. Operating 10-meter HF is very different than operating on VHF and UHF. Tuning and timing are keys to successfully making contacts. A mentor can be invaluable, and if you upgrade, you get more HF privileges. So I'd like to go ahead and start taking questions. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do two ways. Barry's going to tell me about things that are in the chat. So if you want to type something in the chat, Barry will forward it or I'll see it myself, and we'll do that. And then we'll go through and we'll let people raise their hand on Zoom, and I will be happy to let you ask your question in person. So you can do it either way. I like both ways of doing it, but I want to make sure that everyone has the ability to do it, whether you're on the YouTube Live or whether you're on Zoom with us tonight. So I'll put this link up and leave that on there so we can go through and see what kind of questions we have.
Okay.
Barry, do we have any outstanding questions?
I've been answering questions on both Zoom and on YouTube. So the question a lot of people are starting to have are the slides going to be available? You're going to email the slides to everybody that was registered, correct?
I will. I've already actually done that. In your email that you received with the link, it has the slides in that email. So if you go to the email, you'll see that there's a link on the bottom of the email. Let me bring that up real quick here. Excuse me while I find the right browser that it's on. So the email that went out. Okay, Windows 11, don't do that to me. Okay, the email that went out to everyone is this email right here. It has the link to the Zoom tonight. It has the YouTube. But then when you go down to the bottom of this, it has the list of questions and answers. So I'm going to bring that up in a minute. And it also has the link to the slideshow. So both of those are in the email that you received. If you haven't taken a look at it yet, this is the list. So I went through all the questions and answers. This is the registration. We've actually had 3 people register. These are all the people that registered. And this was great because some of you ask a lot of questions. Some of you asked just one question. Some of you asked no questions. But I went through all the questions the other day, made sure that I covered all the material that I could in the slideshow. But I also put together this, I think it's 9 pages long, this 9-page document that goes through the questions. They're broken down by antennas, radios, propagation, rules, operating, POTA, and other activities. And I did not phrase these questions. These are the questions from the people that posted them. Sometimes there was more than one person asked the same question, and sometimes I combine the questions so that the question may be a little bit longer. It might be from more than one person. But all the questions and answers have been there, and if there's any more questions that didn't get answered in that list, I'll add those to this list. So you should have access to that, and you should have access to the slideshow presentation from this link right here. That'll bring up the slideshow presentation. And again, just to remind you, when you go to the third slide, if you click right here, it will download a PDF version of it. I would suggest you don't do that unless you need it, because that won't be the most up-to-date version, because I'm always updating this. The other thing is, I think, I can't tell you for sure yet because it hasn't been confirmed, but I think this session is also going to be presented live at the Dayton Hamvention on Sunday in May. So if you're attending the Dayton Hamvention, I think it's going to be presented at one of the forums on Sunday, but I haven't gotten that confirmed yet. So you're welcome to stop in and see me. I will be at Dayton myself. I'll be presenting it 4 days in May on Thursday for the QRP group, and I will be in the flea market and I'll be at Dayton. So if you want to stop by and see me, I'd love to meet you and tell me you were at the session. So let's go back to the information and let's go through some of the questions.
Well, let me give you a couple of the questions from the chat and Zoom.
Yes.
Is there a 200-watt radio that you can recommend?
I wouldn't recommend a 200-watt radio because there's no need for 200 watts.
If it's a 100-watt radio up here.
Yeah, but I'm going to say a 100-watt radio works just fine on 10 meters.
Yep.
If you really want power, buy a 100-watt radio and then an amplifier and get your extra class and operate at 1.5 kilowatt.
Mm-hmm. And the other question is
channel 19 on the CB. I'm sorry.
And there's one more, couple more.
Real quick. One more thing, Barry, real quick. The difference between 100 watts and 200 watts is very perceivable on the other end. If you really want to bump up
not even a half an S unit.
Yes.
And channel 19 on the CB isn't nearly as busy as 20 years ago. Are most truck drivers using their 10 meters or for their chatter?
I don't regularly listen to the CB band. I had it on a couple of weeks ago when I was playing around with the QT80. I didn't make any contacts. I simply listened because I was running an 80-watt radio, so that would be illegal to use on 10 meters. On 11 meters CB. But I did hear people on, so there is still activity. I don't know how much, and I don't know. I really don't know that much. The last time I was active on CB was 6 years before I got my license back in 1975. I got my license in 81. I think that's the last time I was on CB as a regular CB operator pre-ham radio.
Dan is here too, so he just logged in.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is once you turn me back off, Barry, so I'm not spotlighted. And if you have a question, raise your hand and we will go through and try and find it. We'll let you then open your microphone. So raise your hand or raise your hand virtually on the Zoom and we will ask you to unmute then. So I'll be happy to. Okay, go ahead, Jeff in New Jersey, N2ZNN.
Do you want to drop, or you're going to keep the slide on? Okay.
I'm going to drop the slideshow, but we'll see what questions are because I always end up going back to the slideshow, so I'm not going to drop it.
Right.
First thing,
go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you for your time and energy. I know this is not a simple 5-minute feat that you're doing, and you definitely deserve a round of applause for your time and effort and sharing your knowledge with everyone. I was licensed in '94 and I got out of the hobby right after I got into it. So I've been out longer than I've been in. I got back into it 3 months ago. I bought a Baofeng tri-band handy talkie. But I want to get, of course, a roof antenna, and I want to get more class licenses, of course. So you mentioned before about resident antennas. So
yes,
there's also non-resident antennas. How do you tell them apart? And
a resonance antenna is designed for a specific frequency and it's tuned for that frequency. So for example, a dipole is typically tuned for one frequency. But if we took a random length of like 100 feet of line, we could use an antenna tuner and then tune it. So that would be a non-resonant antenna.
Okay, gotcha.
A lot of pony people use that.
Yeah.
If I get a rig that does not have a built-in antenna tuner, do I require an external analyzer or SWR meter, or are they both the same?
Let's go through that scenario because that's a good question. So let's say you have an antenna that's resonant. If your antenna is resonant, resonance on that particular band is good. You don't need an antenna tuner at all, internal or external. If you do have a radio that has a built-in antenna tuner, they're typically about a 3-to-1 ratio antenna tuner, so they're not real wide. So they can tune an antenna that's close, but they can't tune something that's totally non-resonant. If you really want to work with non-resonant type of antennas or antennas that are way off of frequency, you need an external antenna tuner that has about a 10-to-1 or 12-to-1 tuning ratio. Now, most radios don't have that. The Xiegu 96, the G90 does have a 10-to-1 ratio, and the Elecraft KX2 and KX3 and the K3 do have a 10-to-1, but most of the other radios are going to have a 3-to-1. So if you buy an ICOM 7300 or a Yaesu 710, it's going to have a 3-to-1 tuner. It'll touch up, but it won't tune non-resonant antennas. You're going to need an external antenna tuner to do that.
When you say 3-to-1, are you referring to the SWR?
No, I'm talking about the ratio of that it can be off, that it can tune the difference of. So if your antenna is more than 3-to-1 ratio off, it's a tuning ratio. It's not really specifically, you can't really use it to tell the numbers, but it just means it has a wide range as opposed to a narrow range. So a 3-to-1 is a narrow range tuner. A 10-to-1 antenna tuner is a wide range tuner.
I got you.
But
Okay.
we're not going to, let's just do it in general terms like that because they're not very that specific.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Anthony. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Other questions? Comments?
Someone was having trouble downloading the PDF on the link.
Okay, when you do the PDF, it's going to take at least it's probably going to take about 2 minutes to download. And again, I suggest you don't use the PDF unless you absolutely have to, because the slideshow will be always improved over time.
Okay.
We will post the PDF though on the RATPAC site, so it will be there with the video. So if you have trouble downloading it, just wait until we get the video posted on YouTube, and there will be a PDF there. But again, that'll be frozen in time as of that day. It won't be as new as the newest one. Because I do so many presentations and I do them so often, I'm always updating everything. So this started out as like a 60 slide show, and it went up to 139 over the last couple of days. My wife just groaned from the other side of the room because she's been proofreading this for me. When you write this much, no matter how careful you are, you make simple mistakes. You think you wrote something and you didn't really write that down. So she's been nice enough to proof this for me.
He deserves a star.
She's a ham also. K8ODP is her call sign.
She still deserves a star.
Oh, I'll make her dinner again. I make her dinner every night, so that I feed her. She works for food. Okay. Other questions? I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has. Again, this isn't a one night only thing. Go back through the slideshow again, go back through the video when we post it. Get on the air. If you have questions, feel free to drop me an email. If you're going to be at Dayton, look me up at Dayton. I'd be happy to meet you. And think about stopping in every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific for the RATPAC. Our upcoming sessions, if you go to the ratpac.us and you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see our upcoming sessions. So Wednesday night, we have a great session coming up. We have a great speaker, Ward Silver. He's a wonderful speaker if you've never heard him before. He's going to do contesting your ham radio fitness center. And Ward is also very funny. He's also a great musician. I don't think he's going to play any instruments for us, but he'll be on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. You just click on this link and it'll take you right out to the YouTube link. There's nothing special you have to do. Then we have my experience as a Burning Man 911 radio operator. The week after that, we have what is in your information go kit. We have alerting mobilizing emergency stations. We have Eric Nichols, who's a great person. He's a very scientific oriented ham, and he's going to do amateur radio and STEM presentation for us. We're going to take a week off for Hamvention. We're going to have CSI. We're going to have Rob Sherwood, who does all the reviews of the radios. He's going to talk about his Clean Signal project, Clean Signal Initiative, CSI. May 27th, we're going to have a snapshot of U.S. POTUS sites and activations. Frank Howell put out this really interesting paper. He's a PhD, and I'm not sure if his background is in statistics, but it was great statistical analysis of different areas of POTA operations. And then we'll have our field day update that Marty and I do annually each year. We also do a Christmas gift idea back in, and you can go scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that these all have YouTubes and documents. That means these are done. So if you're interested in European tour of small and unique DXCC entities that I presented a couple weeks ago, you click here for the YouTube. You can click here for the slideshow. But in December, we always do a holiday ham radio gifts, and that's available for all year. So you can take a look at that and see if there's anything you're shipping looking for gift wise. There's over 450, 500 presentations here with videos recorded going all the way back to 2020. So you can scroll through this whole list. You're welcome to watch all these. When you go out to our YouTube channel,
one of the best recordings we ever did, or we did 2 or 3 of them, were on the April Fool's Day ones,
yes,
where we had a great couple of presentations, but it was all April Fool's.
So if you go out to the RATPAC site, you can see all the different videos there by going to YouTube also.
Scott has a question. He has his hand up.
Yes. Go right ahead. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, good afternoon or evening, I guess. Thank you for doing this program. It's been very informative. Our local club is trying to set up a 10-meter net to encourage technicians to get on the radio on HF, just to give them something different, something new. And I'm wondering if you have any ideas that you can help with that. We've been having problems being able to connect to anyone. We're close by, some even people 15 miles away. I'm on top of a hill, highest in the area, and we're not being able to connect.
Okay.
And one of the older guys, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, finish up. I have an idea, but go ahead.
Okay. One of the older guys said that he felt maybe the net control station should have a beam and point at each of the stations rather than having, because that may help be able to receive them, but that isn't, and maybe function sort of, he may sound like functioning more as a repeater so that the others could hear as well. I don't know how to set that up though.
Okay, so I think he's partly on the track with the problem, but maybe not completely. I have a feeling that remember, you're talking close together. So when you do that, then polarization does matter. So I'm guessing it's a mix of polarizations between different stations. So when you're doing a local net, you want everyone to be polarized the same way as possible, if possible. So
I have 2 antennas, one polarized in each direction, and still haven't been able to get
still haven't been able to hear anyone.
Sometimes you can hear something, but not clearly understand it.
10 meters might be long now.
Yeah, that's the other problem. If you're not real close, if you're not line of sight, VHF, UHF close, the 10-meter signal will skip right over top of you a lot of times. So Barry's right on that aspect of it also. But if you're all within a 5-mile circle, you should be fine. But if you're 25, 35, 45 miles from each other, then it starts getting a little iffy. Even though you're close, your signals are going over top of people.
Okay, so you think probably 25 is the limit? Or less than that?
Probably that's going to be close to what the limit's going to be. Again, if everyone's polarized the same, it's going to be better than if they're not. Having beams is good, but the problem is you're going to run into is everyone's going to have to be switching their beam, knowing where the other people are at to do that. So if everyone had beams. Now, if one station has a beam and they're net control and they know where everyone's at, that would work. One of the things you can do is take a look at NetLogger, first of all, because it's a piece of software that runs in the background that can help manage the net, and people can put in their locations, and then that way the net manager, if they are using a beam, could turn their beam in that direction without having to guess where they're at.
Sure, that makes sense.
So I would take a look at NetLogger.
And wait a few years.
All right.
A couple of years.
Yeah,
it'll be wonderful.
Yeah, Barry's right on that. Yeah, it will be back to being local, and that problem. That's the funny thing about 10. We complain when it's not long, but then when we do want to use it close in and it is long, we complain about it being long. So yeah, I think that's going to be a big portion of it right there. The fact that it's just too long right now, because every band does this. I mean, I have someone who's about 40 miles away from me, and normally I have no problems with 160 with them, but when 160 gets too long. I can't hear them because it's going right over their head. So yes.
Sure. Okay.
So yeah, give that a try. Okay, I saw someone else had their hand up. I don't
Thank you very
recognize
much.
it. Yeah, and
Ed.
Ed, N1 EXD, EDX, I'm sorry.
Yes, Anthony, sorry, I just lost my headset here, but I just want to commend you on your dedication and your passion and your time for all that you've done. I'm just so impressed with your presentation today and what you have in your library and website that I just quickly looked at. You're a blessing, so thank you.
Well, thank you, Ed, but I really enjoy doing it. I love putting together new stuff. And that's the other thing about RATPAC too. If there's a topic you want us to cover, just let us know. And again, also, if you'd like to talk for your local club, I'd be happy to do that also. But yeah, thank you. Other questions?
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Other questions? I'd be happy to answer any other questions anyone has. Please raise your hand. Or if you have any questions or comments or anything that I didn't cover, you want to suggest to people that I know we have some experts on here that have been on much more than I have. So if you have anything that I did not cover or something I didn't cover, you want to ask a question about.
Going once, going twice.
Dan is going to be disappointed if I don't last 2 hours. So
Dan, you want to come on and say hello?
yes, Dan,
Hello,
Mr.
everyone.
Rat Dan is the one that started this whole RATPAC thing, by the way, and he devotes a tremendous amount of time and effort into keeping this going, and he funds everything, and he tries to keep the committee in line, but I sometimes cause problems with that. But
I keep a bunch of fighter pilots slow down, you know. They're not going to slow down.
He's hurting a
I'm
bunch
already,
of rats.
yes, I'm already on my next big project. I'm getting ready to do my QRP talk at 4 days in May, so I have that. I've been working on that.
I tell you, it wasn't for a tremendous team. You've got some of them on here tonight, Anthony, of course, and Barry and so forth. RATPAC would probably been gone a long time ago. It's been a very successful endurance. Like Anthony said earlier, we have hundreds of presentations out there. Great information for clubs and individuals. And it's largely due to the work of the team. We have a tremendous team. That's one of the best things I ever did was put together that team. And they just paid off many times over and over again. I can't thank them enough.
Your chance for other questions, comments. Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
I don't want to monopolize, but does the RATPAC get involved in shortwave listening as far as RTL, SDR?
We have not done a program on to my knowledge. I have just the one that I've done on the online SDRs, but we have had some other general interesting. So if we have someone that could do a good program on it, we would think about doing that. We just had one, for example, on the old commercial CW, the KPH. We've had one. We've even had two presentations on railroad telegraphy and the history of telegraphy. So yeah, we don't just do amateur radio. We do other technology related things. So yeah, if someone knows a good speaker on that and lets us know, we'll be happy to line someone up to do that.
I bring it up at my local ham club I just joined a couple months ago, and nobody has any interest whatsoever in shortwave listening.
No, I use them working with students. I use them a lot because I just think back to the days when I wanted to be able to do shortwave listening, and using the online radios means that I can hand a kid a really good receiver, a really good antenna, and I can let them pick anywhere in the world to put it. So take a look at the presentation that I have in the link there for the the online software defined radios. Watch that video and see if that's helpful to you at all. Tom, W3TDH.
Thank you, sir. Side note, a comment. During World War II, when amateur radio was fairly well shut down, shortwave listeners would copy the German broadcast from people that they had prisoner, and then they would forward those to the Department of the Army and so forth. And the Department of the Army would confirm through the Red Cross, but the Red Cross didn't publish general list. They'd only answer inquiries. So when the U.S. would then inquire, they could tell the family that their husband, son, or whoever was safe. And it was shortwave listeners who brought that information to the Army's attention.
Oh, I never heard of that. Thank you. Dan, N7XDL.
Hi, Anthony. There's a question on YouTube that it's not being asked, so I told Bug Tank that I would ask it.
Yes.
He says, I'm in Manhattan, New York City, downtown, lots of buildings. Yes, that's true. I could probably get something up on the roof, but what are some 10-meter handhelds with the Yagi that I could use to approach this?
Well, there used to be a couple handhelds. There were some from Mizuo, Mizuo, had a handheld. There was also one, I can't remember the name of the company, but there's no handhelds currently being built. But you can use some of the smaller radios in a handheld configuration with a whip antenna. So, for example, the antennas that I talked about from the QMX from QRP Labs. Let me bring that slide back up here again real quick. There was just someone on Facebook who's been building a little battery pack that attaches to the side of that and then putting an antenna on it and using it as a handheld. Also, the Elecraft KX2 is a single sideband CW radio that you can hold it in a handheld configuration because it has a built-in microphone and you can put a whip antenna. And I actually do that. There's pictures of me operating that way. I've done it many times. So those are two things that would be very quick, easy things to take out in the local park, get on the air. So let me go back to the slideshow real quick here. These little radios right here, you could easily hook up a battery. And I actually have a little battery that I rubber band to the back of mine that's the same size as the radio. Put a whip antenna on this BNC, turn it on its side, and you could use it like a little handheld. The Elecraft KX2 but there are no 10-meter specific ones right now, but this radio can easily be held in your hand and it can be turned on its side, and there's a microphone right here and there's a push to talk button on it, so you can actually use it as a handheld type of radio very easily. This has a really good built-in antenna tuner, so you can use non-resonant antennas with it. I think you should have them take a look at the portable operations slide that I talked about, because in there I talk a lot about operating in the field, and that would allow him to operate in a park or somewhere else without having to be worried about being in the city. But if he has a balcony, that's a possibility. If he has a roof that he can get up on, that's a possibility with something like this. But there really are no handheld 10-meter only radios right now that are single sideband. But there are some available used that you might be able to find, but they're going to be few and far between. Something like this Elecraft KX2, which is a little bit more money, or something like this QRP Labs radio. And there was just a whole thing on Facebook of a gentleman who's been building with 3D printer. He builds a little power pack that fits on the bottom of this and clips onto the bottom with an extra little speaker in it that plugs into the audio jack, and it feeds into the DC plug right here. So it just adds a little bit of to the bottom of it. I think he's running two of those batteries in it, the 18 650s, and he's running it that way because you can run this radio off of not a lot of power. But yeah, that's the route I would probably go if I was looking for something, because there really aren't the handhelds right now. And if you do find one, they're collector's items and they're going to be really expensive, and they're not going to work as well as something like this. And they're definitely not
What
going
about
to
the
cost
5-watt ICOM?
The 5-watt ICOM, the ICOM 705, it's a little bit bigger than this, but either of these two, like this is the ICOM 705. It's not real big. It's available with a backpack.
And an
Any of
antenna.
these radios like this, yeah, you can do this. But I cover a lot of this on the presentation on portable operations and then the QRP presentation. So here's like the ICOM with it in a backpack. So that might be a route to go too. But have him take a look at my portable presentation. I think there's a lot of good ideas in there for him. Other questions, comments? Anything else on the two chats, Barry?
Nothing that I can see.